Every time, Katie, I dream of your bed, I wake up with aches I never knew before. Every time, Katie, we stir up the dead, I want you just a little bit more. Thought I heard you say my name, thought I heard it faintly. Every time, Katie, I'm hanging by a thread, it seems to be quite often lately. Every time, Katie, I drive to your house, I get lost in the neighborhood. Every time, Katie, the fire gets doused, I run off to gather more wood. Sometimes I think that there's no point in wondering what could be. Every time, Katie, you wear that blouse, hanging fruit on a poisonous tree. Please don't tell me it's not gonna happen. Please don't tell me to believe in fate.
I'm not trying to tell you anything. Sometimes all is lost the moment you hesitate.
Hi, it's Chuck from Above the Basement, Boston Music and Conversation. We met with David Wax and Suze Slezak in a different part of Concord, Massachusetts, where we talked with them fittingly in a guest house where they were staying with their own family of 4. They are on a 10-city tour as a duo, humming along the way with new creations of melodies and lyrics, while at the same time teaching their kids a thing or two about language, culture, and the road. David Wax Museum will both soothe and surprise you with meditative harmonies and often unexpected but pleasant repetitive lines and hooks. It is an anthropological journey into their own Mexo-American connection. While on the road as a 2-piece, those familiar with them may consider them a 5-piece band, but spoiler alert, the upcoming touring show seems to be expanding to a 7-piece in a town near you soon. You might get lucky and even hear them while you are blindfolded for a new experience altogether. Perhaps you should blindfold yourself right now, provided you are not driving or operating any machinery, and listen to our conversation with David Wax Museum, recorded at a beautiful guest house in Concord, Massachusetts.
Can I just have a little more me in my ears?
Yes.
Me in my ears. This is
not
not going to
that you guys
happen,
say
though.
anything like, you know.
You never know. You never know.
You never know, I guess.
I had a glass of wine at dinner. Does someone have a phone? Will you just take one little snap of this to send the people whose home this is?
Yeah, of
Houses, because they will think this is awesome.
I'm wondering if I know them. What are their names?
Patrick and Maeve McQuinney.
Are they originally from Concord?
No.
Because I grew up in Concord.
They're not originals.
But this is an awesome house. It's so funny, too, because I drive by this house every day, picking up my daughter from school. Mm-hmm. I literally remember driving by this one and the next one, the Pillars, right there. They're gorgeous houses. Mm-hmm. And it's right in Concord Center. It's like
beautiful. I know. We just walked
awesome.
downtown yesterday.
Yeah, just being able to walk downtown. But you guys live in
Virginia.
Charlottesville, Virginia.
Yeah.
You went to Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
Are you originally from Boston?
No, I'm from Columbia, Missouri.
Columbia, Missouri. And how about yourself?
From Charlottesville.
From Charlottesville. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
well, then we don't know. You don't talk to people who aren't from Boston.
Oh, we started a band in Boston, so it's really it's legit. It's legit.
Okay. Well, it's more connected
we both
than
went to
others.
School here.
No, Suze was in Boston on and off for over a decade. It still, I guess, feels like the home base of the band, even though we haven't been here in a long time.
So it's a college connection to Boston.
And that's where you met?
We met after we both had graduated,
yeah,
and both had left Boston, and then we both moved back here.
And why'd you move back here?
I was in a relationship at the time, and the woman I was dating decided to go to grad school here.
Okay.
So we moved back.
And were you a musician at the time when you moved back?
Not professionally. Playing music since I was 10 and writing songs since I was 13. So I'd been just part of what I did most of my life. But when I lived in Boston as a Harvard student, I did not play much music at all. I was just so focused on my studies.
What was your major there?
History and literature.
Yeah, right, as a history major.
Right on. I did focus on Latin America, and so then went to Mexico after I graduated on a fellowship to study folk music.
Huh.
And so it was during that year that I started kind of stewing on this idea and thinking about coming back to the States and getting a band started and doing something that combined the Mexican and American music that I was interested in.
What was your fantasy band at that point?
In terms of
Like, what did it look like, or what was the lineup like?
There's like a beautiful woman singing harmonies. And
Good, it all came true. Wow.
No, I didn't have an idea.
Did you busk while you were here?
Yeah, I played in the subways when I got back. I just like did the open mic circuit. When I came back to Boston in 2007, I was just like, all right, I'm just doing music full time. I had money left over from this fellowship, so I knew I could live on that for a little while. And I just like, every waking moment was just kind of trying to get something pushed further with a song or with booking a gig.
Well, it was just you though. You were just a solo guy.
Yeah, but I didn't want to play solo. I would go to the open mics by myself, but my idea was always I was going to try to find people to play with. I never really enjoyed the whole like singer-songwriter, one guy with his guitar thing.
Right.
You got involved with Latin American studies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually. Did you discover that love of Mexican American of music style while you were there? Or did you go out there thinking that the music was in you, the Latin American music was in you to begin with?
I guess there are a couple of ways to answer that question. Because I do feel like there's some part of it that is like, you find a music style, and when you start singing in it and playing in it, you feel like there's some part of yourself that you're expressing that feels like I couldn't express that in my own language, or I couldn't express that in these styles of music that I grew up with. So in some sense, when you're like, I guess when you said that, I was thinking, oh yeah, there's something about it that resonated with me pretty deeply. I got introduced to Latin folk music through the Buena Vista Social Club record, like I think a lot of people. And so got interested in Cuban son, and I was interested in speaking Spanish, learning those songs. I went to college for my first 2 years in California at a small place called Deep Springs College. It was there where, I started to value myself as a musician in a different way. I was just living in a very small community. It's just 26 students, very isolated, and so you kind of like have to provide all your own entertainment. And my first summer, after that freshman year of college, I went to Mexico just to do volunteer work, but I was placed with a family of musicians. And so that's when I first got introduced to Mexican folk music.
That's some serious immersion.
I mean, it was a place where this particular style of Mexican folk music called son huasteco or huapango music is really thriving in this little tiny town in Mexico, about 8 hours north of Mexico City. It's the guys that are traveling around playing in the cantinas. They'll walk into a restaurant and this trio will play this music. And now it's become a thing where every Sunday they're playing and hundreds of people come out to dance. So it's a pretty thriving scene. So I heard this music, fell in love with the music, got interested in the culture. Just a lot of seeds got planted then. So then I go back to California to Deep Springs College, and we had just hired a professor who was an anthropologist who had spent most of his career in Mexico and studying the Mayan in Chiapas. In the process, he'd learned hundreds of folk songs. I have this great mentor that then all of a sudden is like, all right, let's just learn songs. And so we just would hang out, and he would teach me songs and kind of fed all this interest I had in the Zapatistas and trying to just understand the experience I'd had. So then I go back down to Mexico the next summer, and now I'm this blue-eyed gringo that shows up and I know 100 Mexican folk songs. And so it was a different kind of way of connecting with people. And there's a sense of like, oh yeah, this guy gets it and respects the music. Once you've done that legwork, people take you seriously in a different kind of way.
So you learn the language is one thing, but if you get the culture.
Real ethnomusicologists, a lot of them will shun what I did. To like me to like try to learn to play the music, they're kind of like, then I'm interfering with it or interacting with it or changing it. But I went there as a musician. I didn't have any training in terms of, an anthropological way. It was just like, I love this music. It's connecting with me in some way. I love the way that it allows me to interact with people in this culture. And
yeah, screw them. I think you did exactly what you should have done. I think that's awesome, and it kind of connects all the dots right there for you.
Yeah, you had no agenda.
Especially for an American to go into a different country, albeit an attached one, right where we should be much more educated on our Mexican neighbors than all of us are. To go there and know their songs, that's probably an anomaly rather than the norm, right? Most American musicians won't know their traditional folk songs. You must have impressed the hell out of them down when you got down there.
It was funny because sometimes there was a moment when I would teach groups of kids these songs in the villages I was living in, and some friends from Mexico City came once and they saw me kind of leading this like little choir of kids, and I had taught them the wrong way to sing some song, or my Spanish was still not very good. And so they were like, to hear them like these kids learning some traditional Mexican folk song incorrectly.
Yeah.
You destroyed a whole culture in 10 minutes.
Right. Have you, as a duo or as a band, come back ever full circle to that community as David Wax Museum?
Not yet. I think it's definitely intend to do that, and perhaps as a family.
Yeah.
Our daughter's really interested in learning Spanish. She's 4, and bedtime tonight she said, "Mom, I want to learn all the languages in the world
Good for her.
so I can go to any place and talk to anyone." She said that's nice.
She's smarter than me
You should
already. I
collab,
can
Pete.
tell.
Let's start with Spanish.
Got a great idea.
So you went to Wellesley,
And studied anthropology.
studied
in
anthropology.
fact. Uh-huh.
See, look at this. It's all-
Yeah. I was an anthropology major
I
myself.
thought I was thinking that just the way you were asking those questions.
You a cultural anthropology studies,
I
or did you
suppose
do?
so. Cultural, yes.
But you were a musician when you got to school?
Yeah, I grew up in a family that played a lot of music, and we sang a lot, and both my parents really valued it and pushed us pretty hard into playing and singing.
Classical instruments or?
Yes, we did study piano and violin. I each had to choose 2 instruments, or we all had to start on piano and then choose one other instrument. We were part of a pretty thriving old-time music community in Virginia, so I also grew up learning those old-time tunes.
Did you go to those festivals, those fiddle
I
festivals
did.
and do all that?
I did. So much fun. As a kid, it's going to music festivals incredible because you have this total freedom,
Yeah.
you know, and you're camping and
And it seems to complement the Mexican-American style.
Mexo-Americana.
Mexo.
It's this sort of word that we came up with, or someone came up with, and we thought we can say that's what we do, and it's really stuck. And that's been a way to sort of put some little frame or box around what we're doing.
Yeah, because when you came back, you guys met and you started making music together. I don't know that whole history. I'm curious more about
Well, that's
it.
what I was asking. Like, after you graduated from Wellesley,
Uh-huh.
how soon after that did you meet David?
Maybe 4 years. Or
So were you
something.
playing music on a regular basis between
let's
then?
see. So I graduated. I didn't really play a lot in college. I was in part of a group called the Fiddleheads. I was hanging out with my college friend tonight, and she was reminding me about that. There weren't a lot of musicians at Wellesley, so I sort of stuck out as, you know, the girl who would sit on the roof playing the fiddle, or
Fiddler on the Roof.
I guess you might say.
What? I knew you were
Sorry.
going to say that. I knew
had
that was
this little
coming.
rooftop deck. I wasn't fishing for
That's
that.
cool.
but, in the feminist co-op that I lived my senior year. I also got a fellowship after college to travel, and I was studying textiles, studying spinning of natural fibers. So I went around the world doing that, but picked up a fiddle halfway through because I just felt like it's a really great way to meet people and connect with people. And similarly, when I was back in Virginia for a while and then moved back to Boston, and once I got here, I thought, if I want to make friends, I've got to go to jams. And so I had moved back to Boston and was working at McLean Hospital, sort of playing out to jams and bluegrass jams and old-time jams around the city. And I'd sort of joined 2 other bands and was starting to play out and really loving that. David moved back from Mexico and said, I want to find bandmates. And one thing he had done, which was not a fruitful process, but he had made these big, giant photocopied posters saying, do you play the, and then he listed like every instrument you can think of.
Jawbone? Was Jawbone one of them?
That wasn't one of them yet, but so see.
Should have been.
And then he's like, if so, email me at
Check out my MySpace page.
page, right?
Yeah.
So that didn't work for him. He posted them all around the city. But so this friend said, oh, I know this woman who plays the fiddle and sings. And so he contacted me, and we sort of emailed back and forth. And the first time we met, he was hosting his own house concert in his own living room with some guys he had met. I went to that show. Didn't feel that impressed by the music, but he was kind of interested in singing together. So I said, okay, I'll get together and sing. And we did that, and that felt like a lot of fun. So we continued doing that, and he asked if I'd join his band, and I said, I'm already in 2 bands, and I have a full-time job, but all right, well, I will, because 3 bands, that
That's
felt
a good-
pretty good.
That's very cool. More bands the merrier.
But
Was that David Wax Museum at the time?
Yeah, it was.
sort of
That
the
was.
first rendition of it, right?
Hmm. I don't know when we started using that name. Maybe already the first
Pretty
gig in
early on.
November.
I think.
Like one of those
I
first.
don't think there was another
Yeah,
name.
I think after that first concert there was probably nothing. The one that
That
you
house
came
concert.
to, and then everything after that we started. So it was me and Suze and this incredible dobro mandolin player that I'd met at the Cantab. This guy Jiro Kokubu from Japan played with us the first couple of years, and Jack McGrath played bass with us. So that was the first iteration, was the 4 of us. So yeah, our first like real gig is the David Wax Museum. Me and Suze was at the Lily Pad.
So you played in a band
Yeah.
first, you harmonized first, you wrote together, and then at some point you started dating, and then you got married.
Something like that.
That's like us, Chuck. We just started doing the podcast together.
Not really.
Well, I
It's
don't
nothing
know.
like us, as a matter of fact.
But you first did the podcast and then became friends?
No, we were friends.
We're not
first.
friends
Yeah,
at all,
yeah.
actually. No, we were in a band together.
And we started the podcast.
And we started the podcast after.
Yeah, it's very similar to your story.
is. Come on,
yeah,
yeah.
This is an American story.
I guess so. Yeah, it's all American. It's love American style, really, is what it is.
Late, you've had many reasons to cry. I could sing you the saddest song, but it would be a mouse to the bull that is the sadness, barreling through your house. I'll be your wheelbarrow, baby. I'll be your baby, that's right. Kick up your feet. The streets are narrow. The stars will pass like sparrows tonight.
So can I talk about music a little bit?
A little bit.
I really enjoy your music, and I think that a lot of it's meditative. I say that because I ride the train to work every day. I listen to music a lot. There's some trance-like vibe that I get in some of your songs. Tunes like Wheelbarrow Baby and Every Time Katie. There's something about them that, you don't have a typical verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, which is what I like about your tunes. And I wanted you to talk about that a little bit because, there's some unexpected stuff that happens. And it's subtle sometimes, but there's some unexpected things that you don't hear a lot of songwriters do. I like getting surprised by some of that.
Yeah, I hear that. I think that's a cool way to put it. I guess sometimes my instinct is a pretty traditional structure. And I think that it's been in working with Suze and with the other musicians in the band and being in the studio where I think I've been challenged in really good ways to kind of deconstruct the songs and really questioned whether that structure that we kind of fall back on intuitively, because it's just like there's some part where you can kind of go into automatic pilot and just trust, like as you're writing a song, that okay, then that this is going to go next, and so kind of stopping and trying to question those intuitions. And I think that what's been cool in the studio experiences is like really slash and burning and kind of going like, does this really add anything to go back to the chorus here, or does it really? And sometimes I'll write a song that'll be tons of verses and Suze will slash a bunch of them. You're like, really, this is the only one that is really drawing me in. Why don't we just keep repeating that and kind of build off of that, and then kind of think about the next time we approach it, what's going to be different and change
and
in
keep
a subtle
repeating
way.
some of those lines.
Yeah.
I have a simple request, hope it's not an imposition, hope it's not an imposition. I have a simple request concerning your house for guests, and me, I'm in a time of transition. I have a simple request, hope it's not an imposition. I've been living out of a suitcase, sleeping in dingy rooms, I've been living out of a suitcase. I've never lived in LA, but I've always wanted to. I've never lived in LA, but I've always wanted to. Can I stay in your guest house? Will you let me stay in your guest house? I won't get in the way, I'll be quiet as a mouse. No music after 8, if you let me stay in your guest house.
Some of that repetition is David's use of Mexican song structure. Do you want to give an example of that?
Sure.
I guess the sort of
I
ABBA.
mean, in Guesthouse, you use that a lot, right?
Totally,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's a way that the verses kind of are folded over on each other.
Right.
Coming out of the blue sometimes is hard. I have a simple request, hope it's not an imposition. Hope it's not an imposition. I have a simple request concerning your house for guests.
Yeah,
I'm in
there's
a time of
symmetrical
transition, and then you
phrases.
go back to the top again to the A-B part. And so it has a really interesting effect on the brain. And I think as I was learning these folk songs, I got a book of all these verses, and I was trying to learn them, and it's just like a couplet. And then all of a sudden you hear the way they're singing it, and they're these incredible repetitions. It gives you a chance to say something else, and then when you go back to the first thing you said, you have to see it through a different lens. And so it's been really fruitful as a songwriter to borrow that technique.
It's basically ABBA then there's CD,
Yeah.
and then you come back to A, B. So when you say the A and B line again, it has a new twist.
But the repetition, it is different. I don't know what it does to the brain, but I know it's happening because you're not just saying the same two lines in the same sequence. You're switching them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it does. While it's repetition, it doesn't strike me as being repetitive.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I was noticing the other day when you're talking to little kids, I always repeat everything I say twice. But I think there is something about I'm hypothesizing that there's something about our brains that, of course, you learn through repetition. So it's this beautiful way that through this singing, maybe because it was an oral tradition, it's a way that anyone can learn it because you know it's going to repeat, and it's like a way of learning and a way of
it's a way
communicating.
That it's a call and response music. And so if you're staying next to someone at a fandango and they're singing, it gives you a chance to hear it in a different way so you can repeat it back, I think, also.
It has a tribal feel in that. These aren't just melodies that are catchy. You have some great hooks and nice melodies, but it's the lyrics themselves that are the hook, or that you strive to hear again in that A-B. You know, in the Lavender tune. I like the Lavender tune because it's...
I like that way, but the Lavender tune.
What's it called?
Lavender Street.
Yeah,
no, that's not...
We know what you mean. We know what you mean.
Yeah, I was totally... It's interesting because I think that they're kind of both things working in the band, and maybe in some songs they come together, but I am drawn to writing slow meditative music, and I am drawn to super rhythmic syncopated dance music. And I feel like there are times when some elements of both those things come together that I think, you know, interesting things happen musically, or where we have like a real meditative song like Big Heart of Yours, which is so repetitive. The music doesn't change very much. But then there are these Mexican rhythms on this big huapanguero that I start overlaying against it and kind of cutting against it. And I think that hopefully that's what I feel like there are times where sometimes it's consciously we're trying to do that. And sometimes it's just these happy accidents because a producer's like, okay, well, pick up one of your Mexican instruments and start playing along and see what happens. We have this kind of starting point of like, all right, the band is interested in exploring these two different musical styles and seeing where they can kind of intersect and bounce off each other, and there can be an interplay. And so different people we've worked with in the band and as producers have kind of responded to different aspects of what we're doing there. And at different moments in our own kind of musical exploration, you know, we're kind of like, all right, let's, you know, take a Mexican folk song and then let's just like play it like a rock song, you know, in the way that I think, you know, like was paved before by La Bamba, you know, or something like that. It wasn't like we invented that, but we're kind of doing it from a very different perspective, not as Latinos or Chicanos. Like we don't have that in our heritage. We just love the music, and I've spent enough time with it studying it. So,
or play sort of a more generic ballad, American ballad, but on the Mexican instruments, and see what happens then.
When you bring up about the rhythm, there's one song, Harder Before It Gets Easier. The drums that it starts with, I'm like, it sounds so familiar. And I looked, and I like Radiohead a lot. And there's a Radiohead song called 15 Step. It's off of In Rainbows. It's not the exact same thing. It's similar. Is that a standard Mexican rhythm that I just don't know, or is that something that...
It's a little variation off a traditional Mexican rhythm.
Okay, interesting.
So
that's probably maybe where they got it too, or something.
Yeah, and
it's like, if I can remember, it's like... something like that. I'm not doing it poorly. Right.
Sobbing so hard you can barely breathe. You've been sobbing so hard you can barely breathe. You've been stitching your heart on the outside of your sleeve. You've been stitching your heart on the outside of your sleeve. You've been wrung out and then doused with grief. In the ocean of time, this moment will be brief, will be brief. Oh, I know it's gonna get harder before it gets easier. Oh, I know it's gonna get harder before it gets easier. Knock, knock, papers at the door. Knock, knock, too loud to ignore. Knock, knock.
But the way that it comes off on the record is a little different. It was like I was playing that rhythm on electric guitar, so the way that the producer and the drummer heard it was a little different. And so there's a little bit more of a swing to it. And then it was kind of like, okay, this is a little weird. This is not what I intended. But then we were kind of like, well, this is interesting. This is...
Happy accident.
You know, yeah, it's like we're all responding to it in the studio and feeling jazzed up about it. So let's trust what's going on here. When I played that song for one of my teachers in Mexico, it didn't sound like a traditional son calentano rhythm to him. It had been changed so much that he was like, that's interesting. That's your own weird thing, But
That's Mexo.
Yeah.
Mexo-Americana.
Mexico-Americana. As a songwriter myself, I've asked my drummers, not recently, but I'd say, can you come up with a cool rhythm? Because otherwise I'm stuck in that whatever rhythm I'm in my head.
Yeah.
And if they can give me something really interesting and off kilter to write to, it can really kind of open doors.
Oh,
for
yeah.
you.
That's what this whole thing I feel like has been, is just these creative starting points that the Mexican music and these rhythms have given me has allowed me to, I think, escape certain traps I would have found myself in as a songwriter. Just to have a totally different starting point where all of a sudden Sue's heard me playing the early version of Guesthouse, and it was just like I'm playing this Mexican folk song that I love and I'm just kind of singing about my life. I'm like, I just want a guest house in LA, but I'm just singing over these chords, and it's like, I don't know, there could be something about that song that could be a little twee or something. Then all of a sudden this rhythm is kind of like, there's just a certain kind of energy that rhythm is giving me, and so I'm going to sing in a different way, and then I'm using these, when Sue's heard me doing that, and it jumped out to her, and she's like, keep going, whatever you're doing, like keep improvising, like keep going down that route. I wouldn't have gotten there otherwise.
I want to understand that dynamic a little bit with both of you guys, because you primarily do a lot of the writing, and it sounds like you almost have some producer chops that are just in you. Is that right? I mean, do you guys or arrangements or something like that?
I never think of it as the producer role, but I guess as sort of the editor. He just has gotten to that place where most of us try to get to, of no filter, no critic on your shoulder, just like letting it all out, riffing, and the ultimate babble, just as a kid learning to talk is doing. You're just like trying out every sound. I'll be, doing whatever I'm doing, a little project downstairs or something, and I'll just have like half of my brain tuned in, because you're all men here, but there's a certain part of a woman's brain that is always listening. You can't not listen. You can't tune it out. I cannot tune it out and just focus on the task at hand. I've noticed that a lot of men in my life can do that. I can't not have a little bit of consciousness to what he's doing upstairs. Sorry, honey, I'm always listening in.
That's great.
Luckily,
that's what I want.
This is behind the scenes of David Wax Museum right here.
But it just means when I do hear a certain riff that I think sounds intriguing, I'll instantly be like, babe, did you record that? Are you recording this? And
but
so
that's
kind of
cool, though.
Yeah, I think that's
right?
The little that I've read about Gillian Welch and Dave Rawlings is like a similar thing where you like live with your editor. You live with the person that's kind of like able to sift through, because it's easy for me to generate material. It's easy for me to kind of get into some kind of trance where I'm just spewing stuff or playing some kind of riff and making things up. But then to do that and also simultaneously be able to catch the stuff that's coming out is really difficult. It's like something that you can record a bunch of stuff and then go back another month later and try to listen to it, and like it's a really difficult task. You're almost not able to do it yourself. So to have someone else that knows you inside and out and is so intimately involved in the music, be able to catch the stuff that's kind of flying out to help direct my energy.
It's almost like a built-in focus group. You guys know each other well, and you may not always agree with it, probably, right? I don't know. Do you always agree with her?
I think there are a lot of times where I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
We've lost some of them. I'll hear such an amazing thing, and if I wait 30 seconds, a whole lot more has been spewing out, and so I'll like run him over and be like, you got that thing, and he literally won't know. I'm like, that was the most beautiful, hookiest hit single riff I've ever heard, and it's gone, and he missed it, and he'll like try to repeat and be like, no.
I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing, because like I heard something 30 seconds ago that was awesome, and you're like, I have no clue what you're talking about.
And some of it is that, because he's already like been through. He's already like let.
You just gotta roll tape 24/7.
Which you do sometimes. Sometimes if he's in that riffing mode, he will have a little voice memo, and I can go back and find it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
No, but I like that element of the writing process is unique to you guys.
Yeah, that is
embedded.
Unique. Not many people get to have that kind of editor standing right next to them and hearing something that he was not going to hear. So we talked about how drums can kind of inspire you, but I also read that there's certainly some songs that you've written that you guys play that are just simple guitar or what's the other guitar like?
Harana.
Harana.
Little Mexican guitar.
That are really simple, nice kind of singer-songwriter stuff, really beautiful stuff, but you also bring in different instruments, and you said that kind of helped you throw the rules out the window in the studio when you were writing.
It's been a really helpful part of the process of having these very different Mexican instruments. I mean, that's kind of the starting point, is those instruments. There's going to be one way I'm going to play a song on a guitar that as soon as I pick up the harana, it's going to change. There's just a different way I play the instrument. It's just built a different way, so you've got to adapt very quickly. And then there are about 3 or 4 other different types of stringed instruments from Mexico that I'll play. And then there's all the different instruments that Suze plays that we can kind of start leaning towards one where you're like, kind of, what's the base of the song instrumentation-wise?
Wait, Harana, by the way, is that the 6-string?
It's 8-stringed.
Oh, it's 8.
A smaller body, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a
It's
lot
like a
of people
double ukulele
think it's like a
almost.
ukulele, yeah. All the tones are doubled and sometimes octaved.
But it's
Tuning.
not just 2, 2, 2, 2. It's 1, 2, 2, 2, and 1.
Oh.
So you do have to still
It's
do
a little-
some funky
It's kind of like a
things.
baritone guitar, right?
1,
Baritone
2,
guitar,
2,
same
2,
way?
and 1.
I don't know.
And
No, you're
the ones on either side are the same. The highest and lowest string are either the same or octave.
Okay.
It's not as easy as playing ukulele because that's only 4 strings. Or mandolin
It's
is
a-
8, but
it's
it's,
an
still
ext-
4.
It's an extremely complicated, difficult
I mean,
instrument.
come on, just give me more
compared to
credit than
that
it's
little
ukulele.
ukulele that has just 4 strings.
You play the fiddle. You play the...
I picked up the accordion
Accordion.
since cousin Jordan Wax left the band, since he's an incredible accordion player, and I felt like we were missing that sound.
What else do you
And
play?
Played keys, some
Yeah.
keyboard,
And you play that, what's the...
and the,
what's
donkey jawbone.
So I read your wiki, and it actually mentions that as an instrument that you play.
well, heck
And-
yeah, come
Why
on.
wouldn't it?
Well, it's just, I've never seen it listed on...
It's on our CDs and stuff.
I know,
I mean, so
it is.
it's a percussion instrument.
It is, but, so are shakers and like there's a...
I see. It's true.
You know
I
what I
see
mean?
what you mean.
I
Totally.
mean, it's
You're
certainly-
right.
I
It's
know,
true.
it just struck me.
To your point, though, I don't take
Where
great
is it?
artistic pride in playing this instrument. I mean, I taught myself.
Do you have only one of them?
No, we have so many.
Seriously? These are
Live
real
donkeys.
donkey
Yeah.
bones.
They're not manufactured, they're real
They're
jawbones.
real jawbones.
Wow.
So they all sound very different.
And
so
who-
it's nice to get a couple at a time to really see which ones are the best.
But in all seriousness, where does this come from? Is this Mexican?
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
traditional
Yeah.
Mexican instrument.
It's
There's
almost like a
the-
washboard in a sense.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
part
that
of it,
concept,
uh-huh.
right?
The way the sound is made is from hitting the side of the jaw, the lower jaw, and the teeth rattle because they're loose in their sockets. And then the washboard effect is with the stick running over the teeth. I'll do it.
Rattle. I didn't
So it's a
know that.
rattle plus the of the stick on the teeth. So it's 2 different sounds.
When does the jawbone come into your brain and say, this needs jawbone? I mean, is it in a
Everything
lot of
needs
songs?
jawbone.
I've got a fever, and the only prescription is more jawbone.
Yeah.
We use it, I feel like, more and more sparing these days because I feel like it's more helpful to have Suze on accordion,
Or melodic instrument.
to be doing something melodic. And we have a great drummer now that is covering a lot of the rhythmic patterns there. As a duo, it's just like a nice variation to be like, there's all this information coming across rhythmically, melodically with the different instruments. Like if she's playing fiddle, for example, and then it's like just a nice change to switch to jawbone and harana and just
Yeah.
really strip it down to just a rhythm instrument and a very simple percussion.
Are you guys doing any festivals this year?
We have built up this incredible 7-piece band now that we're playing with for when the time is right. But
With horns. Horn section.
right.
Is this the first time you've had horns?
no, we kind of brought it back for our 10-year anniversary tour in September for our 1,000th show. We got the guys together again for this tour, and it was so exciting for us. I felt unstoppable, and so I feel like, that's what I want to feel that way every time we play. Right now we're doing a duo tour.
Yeah.
I think we'll be doing a lot of that this year to pay for some new recording projects this year. So we're working on new records, and then hopefully whatever we record and however it gets released will happen probably in another year.
Yeah.
And then we'll be back out on the festival circuit.
Well, cool. And tell us about the duo tour. So that's where we are right now. You guys are in New England.
Well, we've been touring a lot as a 4 or 5 piece band over the past many years. Though before that, when we were sort of first starting to tour full time, we were doing a lot of duo shows. But this year, I just felt like the duo is so productive in fan building and putting some money in your pocket. And with our 2 kids now, there's something really simple about just having us show up.
Yeah. Time to breathe, it sounds like.
There's some, real simplicity in that. Because paying for a band on the road is very expensive.
And how many are you doing of the duos?
As this sort of idea of like going back to our roots, we're doing a bunch of house shows this week, and it's so much fun. I mean, yesterday we showed up. It's this beautiful space, really warm people. They made this incredible meal. There's like a warm bed to put the baby in to sleep. It's so loving. People come up, they're so delighted to be there. They bought their ticket, and none of that money goes to the venue. It all goes to the band, and we're going to put it towards the next recording. It's such a simple,
You're really part of
clean way.
It
and
is.
people are such community building.
We just find one fan or friend, and they'd be like, yeah, let's just get 30 people together at your house and do this. And it'll be a party afterward. We won't charge anything. We'll just pass a hat, and we'll sell merch. And we would go there, and we would play 10 shows in a row and stay at the Kellys for 10 days. And then that's how we paid for a lot of our early records was those house shows.
Should we give a shout out right now? Cindy?
To Bill and Cindy Kelly.
They
Yeah.
Our
deserve all
Yes.
the shout outs.
Yeah, as
we
Chuck
could
always
possibly
says,
give them.
2 degrees. My good friend John Churchill's aunt and uncle. Or
Yeah.
Aunt Cindy, right?
Yeah.
Takes
So
a
kind of-
village.
Yeah, I mean, it has in every day of our life as musicians. It's been a ton of people that have supported us to make this possible.
It's so unique to have awesome musicians sitting in someone's house, and it's just comfortable, and you've got the food and the drink. You get to meet the artist afterwards, and it's a very communal thing that they don't get to do anymore because they don't go out to shows anymore.
Totally. Yeah.
And you get new fans there too.
Yeah.
The connection between
Anyway.
musician and the audience
It's
is
also
is so
very, very
tangible.
intimate
It's so
and beautiful.
different from being on stage.
Yeah.
And
Don't you guys go in the middle of the audience or something?
Yeah, we've since the beginning we've loved as sort of just a way to shift the focus coming off stage and coming into the audience, and that's
The
been
club
something we
has
try to keep doing.
They do that sometimes off mic and everything, but do you actually go into like a bigger crowd
Oh yeah,
It's
Sinclair,
very
we've even
cool.
done it. Yeah,
in like the
Come in
middle?
Yeah,
I can remember playing at shows at Johnny D's or even at Toad, and like people just talking. And so I was like, I'm just gonna get off the stage and walk over to them and just play right in front of them, you know. And like, I'm passive aggressive enough that I'm not gonna say anything, but that's how I'm gonna kind of be like, I am playing here, you know. And if you want to listen, you can.
Yeah, there's
And you-
house concerts and then there's private person concerts. Yeah.
And there was this song that was an important song for us early on, where it was based on this Mexican folk song called Carpenter Bird, El Pájaro Carpintero, and you sing a verse, and as soon as it's done, the next person starts right away. And so we started doing this thing where everybody in the band would sing a verse, and we could spread out in a venue, and everybody would kind of have a moment where they're singing a verse, and then you don't know where the next person's going to pop up and sing their verse.
That's fun.
I like that.
We could like tell in the middle of a show, we're like, oh, we got to do Carpenter Bird now. We need to like engage
Need it.
people. We're
So
losing
bring it
them,
back.
or
Bring
yeah,
it
we're
back.
like.
We've been talking for
Thanks.
62 minutes. How about
Yeah.
that?
woo!
Time
And
flies.
no-
when
We're just
you're
getting
having fun.
started. We're just
And
getting
no
started.
baby. I didn't hear
And
any
no
baby.
baby.
I heard a baby peep.
Oh, well,
You did?
she's
But
been
just like
listening
10
the whole
That
minutes
might have
time.
been Joe. When is your next big show other than a house concert that people can come see you?
We have been doing these shows in Charlottesville, where we live now, where we've been playing in these really interesting spaces where the acoustics are beautiful and we can play unplugged, and we've been blindfolding the audience.
The audience is blindfolded and kind of sitting in some interesting way, and the two of us and and other musician friends are kind of taking turns singing songs, sort of singing in the round, but then also joining each other and sort of harmonizing around you, in and around you, blindfolded. And
Wait, for
The
like
whole
one
night?
song?
whole concert.
For the whole concert.
The whole concert.
You have no sight.
Does anybody take it off? Take them off?
A little bit of peeking, but not much. People say it's like an introvert's dream, because you can be at a live show and have live music, but you don't have to be watched and be seen. And
This is
that's
fascinating. This is a whole podcast right here. So
and
that is really cool.
beautiful. It's a beautiful experience. It's so incredible as a musician, because we get to play a live show to audience and no one's looking at you. It's
So
really
cool.
deep experience for a lot of people.
So people, when they go in, they know they're going to be blindfolded. This is
Yeah,
like
Yeah,
of course,
yeah,
of
that's the
course.
whole
It's
deal.
called Concert in the Blind.
Right.
When you buy your ticket, you know
Concert
you're
in
going
the
to show
blind.
up, be blindfolded, and you have an usher lead you to your seat.
We
And
got to
so
tell
we're gonna do
Sally
it. We're gonna
Taylor
do
about
I don't know if I
this.
could
Who's
do
Taylor?
that. I don't know if
We
I
got to
could.
tell Sally Taylor about
Oh,
this.
yeah.
It'd be very
Who's that?
fascinating. So she was one of our guests, and she's really cool. She's in Cambridge, and she does something called consensus. It's consensus as in SENSCS, so the 5 senses. She does this thing where someone does a piece of art. Someone will look at that piece of artwork. They'll write a poem, and then someone will look at the poem, and then they'll create a song.
Neat. Oh, like
And,
telephone with art.
It's
Exactly.
cool.
yeah,
Or
it's
they'll
very-
make
it just
food
reminds
or
me of that.
perfume or.
But you're eliminating a
Neat.
sense, which is really
Yeah.
wild, and you're creating such an imagination with the music, which is just
Yeah.
beautiful. I would love to hear people describe what they go through.
That's what we did. We had
after
people
these.
write. We have quotes of people, and it's really
What they
it's really-
visualize or whatever.
Oh, that's interesting. They just the experience. We had people talk about the experience and write
Yeah, well,
about
that's-
it, and it was
that's- yeah.
really.
And so when is this happening again?
We'll be back in the Boston area in May with this
So
tour.
we're doing a tour with it.
And where would you do it in Boston? Do you know?
We
We're
don't
still
know yet.
figuring it
Maybe
out.
a cool museum space or a chapel or something alternative.
The MFA, they have music there all the time.
Call the Isabel
Yeah,
Stewart
that's what I'm
Gardner.
thinking
Stewart.
about
Yeah,
that too.
that's
That'd
Because
be a
it's
great
really
place.
neat to actually enter the space, and then once the concert is over, the musicians leave, and then when you do remove the blindfold, it's neat to be in a place. You don't know where you are or what was around.
They
you.
never even saw you guys the whole
And
time.
you get their wallets.
Wow.
Great idea.
You should Museum of
definitely gonna fund our
Science would
next
be cool
record.
too.
Museum of Science.
That's
yeah.
a cool idea. Mhm.
That's really wild.
Yeah.
Well, we got to check that out.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome.
Cool. I'm glad you're into it. We are too.
I know we're wrapping up
Yeah.
and we want to hear you guys play.
Can you just play a couple songs for us?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you very much for sitting with us.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much.
guys.
Thank
Thank you so
for
much.
taking time.
Thanks, guys.
Ready, guys?
We're rolling.
They're rolling. David Wax.
My love, I see what is haunting you. My love, I see what is haunting you. Please don't be afraid. Please don't be afraid. Please don't be afraid, my love. Please don't be afraid. Please don't be afraid. Please don't be afraid, my love. Time, 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 my love.
Lovely. Lovely.
That's beautiful, guys. Really, really pretty. All right. Can you do one more?
Sure.
Awesome.
Are you off there?
Please come back to Lavender Street. Please come back to Lavender Street. The couch is cold, I can't feel my feet. Please come back to Lavender Street. Turn on the light when we kiss. Turn on the light when we kiss. I forget who you are, forget you love me like this. Turn on the light when we kiss. I need you like the ground needs the rain. I need you like the ground needs the rain. How it pours and you like the ground needs the rain. Oh, I could feel a bell with all these tears. Please come back to Lavender Street. Please come back to Lavender Street. The couch is cold, I can't feel my feet. Please come back to Lavender Street.
To listen and purchase their music and see where David Wax Museum is playing near you, visit davidwaxmuseum.com. We'd like to thank the hosts Patrick and Maeve, who opened up their guest house to us, as well as thank David and Suze for the great conversation. Go to abovethebasement.com where you can sign up for our newsletter, listen and subscribe to our podcast, like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, and look at all the nice pictures we post on Instagram. We are everywhere. On behalf of Ronnie and myself, thanks for listening. Tell your friends, and remember, Boston music, like its history, is unique.